Have you ever sat and wondered, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get my shit together? Or maybe you feel like you have your shit together, but you can't seem to break through to the next level. You find yourself cycling around your goals, not fully jumping in, committing, or maybe you're like me and you love a good challenge. So you jump all the way in and then feel the whiplash of your emotions, fear, judgment, shame, overwhelm. Why do some humans have this unbreakable resilience while others seem to run and hide from their emotional discomfort? This is the question I ask myself on a daily basis, and the one I am determined to solve on this podcast. I'm here to ask the emotionally uncomfortable questions and help women thrive in all areas of their life. I'm a TEDx speaker, author of Dying to be a Good Mother, and host of this podcast. I'm here to help women take radical responsibility for how they want to feel in all areas of their life so they can show their children how good life can feel. I started my career as a social worker, helping adults see and understand their children's behavior. But it wasn't until stage 4 cancer in 2013 that pushed me to take a deeper stand for change, uncovering how cultural expectations sabotage our dreams. I've been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, Real Simple, Google, Mind Body Green, and more. And the number one question I get asked over and over again is, Heather, how do you do it all while having energy left over? Simple answer is I don't. I plan my week in alignment with how I want to feel. And I want to show you exactly how to do this yourself. So head on over to Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/energy. heatherchauvin.com/energy. I have some freebies over there for you. Videos, PDFs, bonuses, how to stop yelling, how to hold healthy boundaries, and the common reasons why women block their success. Let's dive in to today's episode.
A moment of truth. It was a moment of truth. It was just a moment. And as it turns out, moments are very powerful. There I was, standing in a moment in front of the bathroom vanity. I remember it so clearly. My hands holding onto the sides of the tiny vanity that we had back then. I can still feel the cold white porcelain sink under my fingers. And as I looked up into the mirror, in that moment, I knew I was lost. I didn't know the person looking back at me. I didn't know where she had come from or where she was going. And even though she looked all put together on the outside, something else was happening on the inside. And even though I had checked all the cultural boxes, marriage, children, nice home, successful career, financially comfortable, all the things I was led to believe that would bring me happiness. And yet somehow I was slipping away. You wouldn't know it on the outside. Oh no, I put on the great performance, the persona of the perfect family, perfect marriage, perfect children. Yep, the image of perfection, doing it all with a smile, always happy and in control. From the outside, we were the perfect family. I had fooled everyone. No one saw what was on the inside when the doors closed and there was no one to perform for. No one knew, not even myself, that I was slowly dying from the inside out. No one saw the fear or the constant worry that I would be found out, the stress that I wouldn't be perfect enough. I was so disconnected with myself, I didn't see it either. I didn't recognize fear. I didn't recognize worry. I thought it was just me. It's all I had known. The constant stress of trying to be enough and the worry that I wasn't. The constant fear that others would judge me as not enough. You see, as a little girl, I was taught that it didn't matter who I was. What mattered was how I was. What mattered was how people saw me. I didn't matter. Their opinion of me did matter. So I created a persona of what I thought others wanted me to be. I created a persona of what I thought I should be. And years later, unknowingly, I repeated the same pattern with my children, molding them into who I wanted people to see them as. I wasn't in tune with who they were or who they wanted to be. My focus was on my great performance. I unwittingly gave them a role and expected them to perform it. And when any sign showed up that didn't fit into the great performance, bam, I exploded, ranting and raving, just as I had experienced as a little girl when I didn't fit into my mother's great performance. Of course, I had no conscious understanding that I was performing, nor did my mother in her time. I became who I thought I was. It became who I thought I was, yet something inside was calling me. So in that moment, as I stood in front of that bathroom mirror, feeling utterly lost, I fell to my knees and I heard myself mutter, "I'm lost. Please help me find my way." And be careful what you ask for. Sometime later, not too long after that bathroom mirror moment, it all fell apart. My great performance started crashing down around me. I could no longer mask what was behind those closed doors. I could no longer run from what was welling up inside of me. The result of performing a life rather than living life started to show on the outside. I could no longer pretend things were perfect. My smile could no longer mask the reality that my marriage of 17 years was now ending. My thin body and cute brand name clothes could no longer conceal my children's pain. Cuts on my daughter's arms, which she put there herself, told a different story. And this was just the beginning. My children's pain showed itself in many ways in which could not be hidden. A teenage pregnancy, alcohol use, run-ins with the law. My children were just surviving, barely hanging on. And I thought I would die. What were people going to think? I was drowning in shame. The shame of not being good enough. I was terrified of facing my own truth. Terrified that the truth would indeed reveal what I had been running from all those years, what I didn't want to see, what I didn't want others to see, that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't belong, that I didn't matter. It's been 20 years since that moment I stood in front of that bathroom mirror, begging to be found, begging to find my way. The universe answered, not in the ways I would have wanted, but I am indeed finding my way. It took a lot to get my attention. It took life bringing me to my knees to start listening to my children's behavior rather than trying to get them to change. It took life bringing me to my knees to start listening to myself and to have the courage to face my greatest fear. It turns out my greatest fear was me, of looking at my truth. My children were and are my greatest teachers and the gateway to discovering myself and my enoughness. They, along now with my grandchildren, continue to help me discover parts of myself I haven't known and reminders to stay in my truth.
Oh, man. Thank you.
Whew.
I said, oh, man. I meant, oh, woman. Well, oh, woman.
Takes me right back.
Ah, Diane, you know I love you deeply, and you've been in my world for a few years. We have grown together a lot. You've grown a lot since being in my world. You are a coach inside of our mastery community, and your message has evolved over time, right? As we keep digging. And I always love and appreciate how open you are to growth. And I was like writing down a few things. I've never heard that moment.
Right.
So in our community, we talk a lot about storytelling, especially in the business community specifically, to use that. But storytelling is so healing on a personal level. So like, what was that like to write that for you, to go back to that moment?
I was trying to contemplate, what am I going to write about? What am I going to share? And one morning I woke up and I just, periodically that moment comes back to me, but that morning, that moment came back to me, and I started thinking about that moment, and I knew that's the moment I needed to write about. So I got out of bed and I started writing. And it just kind of fell out. And this is probably, closest to my true story that I've written. And now the train's going by. So,
well, I can hear the train and I can hear my children playing upstairs. So that is life, but it's not that loud. So
So writing it was really, I think it was kind of relieving, actually. Reading it was like, whew. It just kind of takes you right back to that time and those feelings. And
it's like these moments create who we are. But every time I hear a moment from someone and I have a relationship with them, I'm like, oh, that's why you are the way you are. And what I mean in a good way, because so I know I always bring up your age, and I think it's really important. Let's share it publicly, declare it to the world.
Okay. I am 58, soon to be 59 in April. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, Heather, that the older I get, the more alive I feel on the inside. When I was young.
Say that again.
The older I get, the more alive I feel on the inside. When I look back at this time in my life, I was, young and I felt dead inside.
Yeah.
And so I am completely okay with my age.
So the reason why I say that is because a lot of times we all have stories, right? Mm-hmm. Of what we tell ourselves. And the cultural narrative is the older you get, essentially the opposite of aliveness you become, right? Everything starts to deteriorate. I'm too old to do that. All of that. Yeah, people might feel a little more wise and a little of that internal pressure is being taken off. But what I love and appreciate about you is you've been doing the work for a while. When I say the work, I mean personal development. And our stories are very parallel but opposite. And we've said that over and over again. But you actually started you were a teacher in a past life. Mm-hmm. And not a past life. I just say that as decades. Right. You were a teacher. And from my understanding, as you're going through this personally, it was the children in your classroom that kind of ignited conscious I'm going to say conscious parenting, but conscious discipline, conscious education in your world?
Yeah, I think it was my own children that really ignited a curiosity of what is this about? This is there something, I knew there was something bigger going on here and I had to figure it out. And so that tiny bit, that was another moment of just curiosity, and that kind of opened the doors. And then also, because I was a teacher, I was going to conferences and, stuff like that professionally, and happened to be at a professional conference where the concept of conscious discipline was introduced to me. And yeah, I knew that. And I don't trust, especially back then, I did not trust myself at all, but that was a knowing. I knew that was a breadcrumb for me, which, always say follow the breadcrumbs. That was a breadcrumb for me. And I have to say too, that, you always talk about next level. And so that was my entry level for self-development. And when I coached with you, that was the next level.
Yeah.
That took me deeper. And then I just continue it now.
I love it because it goes back to that through line of the older I get, the more alive I feel. And you're constantly like, I am always challenging you. And you have this self-awareness now where you're literally observing your emotional reaction of like, Heather, you asked me to do this. You invited me to do this. And I just clammed up, or I shut down, or shame washed over me, or this story popped up. And then your willingness to sit with it and to process it and to get on the other side of it. To me, I always say that's the emotionally uncomfortable work. That's the emotionally uncomfortable moments. And when people are always like, what am I doing? I'm not going to say wrong, right? We're like, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't this working out for me? And I'm like, sometimes it is. It's just you're experiencing the emotional discomfort of that. And I would identify you as somebody who is now like, has absorbed, like has taken on the identity of a person who is not going to stop doing this work. Like you've accepted that this is part of
never ends. Yeah.
Never ends. And you're just constantly layer. Not, when this happens, then I will arrive.
Right. Because now I was at that point at one time, but now I realize that it's a constant evolving. I mean, I don't want to stop evolving. I want to continue to evolve.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's what it is. And yeah, I think at the beginning, I was completely disconnected from my inner world, my emotions. And I always remember that the moment of when somebody said, what do you feel? And then I said angry, and they said, where do you feel it in your body? And I'm like, well, what?
I know sometimes when I ask people that, they're like,
and I thought as a teacher, I was in tune with feelings, right? Because we label feelings with children. We read about feelings. We, look at pictures about feelings. The thing we don't do is we do not teach children how to feel their feelings. And I came aware of, wait a minute, we're telling kids it's okay to have their feelings, but our actions are not giving the message that it's okay to have our feelings. So I really had to learn that, and I learned it cognitively, but as we kept going deeper and deeper and deeper, it's like, okay, I'm not really actually feeling them. There's so much resistance to that discomfort.
I feel like when you and I have conversations, like it's just so we're learning together, like, and it's interesting to me that we're in the year of 2022. And like you said, the cognitive awareness of, I'll call it emotional intelligence, emotions, is rather new. I would say 20, maybe
Mhm.
30 years.
Mhm.
Probably 30 years ago, the people who started talking about it were considered extremely out there. And then, of course, then they do research. And then now it's just starting to become like, yeah, I've heard of that before, like emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
And so it's new, but yet humans have been around forever. And then so the undoing of the next generation and the generation after that, I do feel like it has swung a little bit with what you're saying of the cognitive, which is where people like parents, and I'm curious your thought on this. Parents will, they know they're supposed to acknowledge their children. I see that you're angry, but I would still like you to get your shoes on. I see that you are frustrated, but now is not the time to be frustrated. And that like they're toning down their voice and they're trying to really see their children, but they're doing it from a cognitive lens and not a feeling lens of like what is actually really going on for my child and myself right now. So curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, it all starts with the self, and then it expands outward. So, we can't teach what we don't know ourselves. And so it's really about understanding what's going on within us. We want to be other reference. We want it to be, it's them. If they would change, all would be good. But it's really about, and I talk about this a lot, is about shining the light, turning that light and shining it back towards ourself and referencing ourself, and what's coming up with ourself. That is the best way to teach children how to regulate, how to have a relationship with their emotions. And really it's that having that relationship. How do you relate to your emotions? Well, I label them. That's about it.
Yeah.
Do you talk to them? Do you say, I'm feeling frustrated right now. I can feel it right here in my chest. I'm going to take a few moments and just breathe. And slowing down. That is so huge. That's a concept in itself. Slowing the hell down. We live in a culture of go, 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 do, hurry, hurry, hurry. We don't have enough time.
But when we slow down, there's a belief that slowing down equals doing less, therefore achieving less.
Right.
And it is very difficult to wrap your head around the fact that you're living a slower life and feeling alive and aligned and amazing and connected in your relationships. And you're actually, quote unquote, achieving more, like the bigger impact. And you won't believe it when you start. So it's trusting and like having faith in the process of that. And I see it again and again and again where I'm like, focus on that one thing consistently and not beat yourself up when you're doing that and your shit comes up. So like an example is, am I waking up early or am I going to have a slower morning routine? When to know when to do that, when to know back off, and why am I trying to wake up at the ass crack of dawn? Is it because I love it and I'm trying to challenge myself, or is that what the gurus say? And so just curious your perspective of like how you've actually been able to slow down and whatever comes up for you.
Yeah. It is mindset. It is a shift from going from living a traditional system to shifting to a non-traditional system, really is what this is about. It's going from, living in the system of autopilot and just fitting into a cultural expectation of what your identity is, and redefining what I see as my identity, redefining our relationships, redefining how we even relate with our children.
Yeah.
Because in the traditional system, the adults have all the power. That's, the role of the parent is to control their children, leaving the children powerless.
Say that again. In the traditional model, the role is for the adults to control the children.
Right. Yeah, which is enormously stressful for both adult and child. The truth is, you cannot control another human being. Mm-hmm. And to be controlled is very stressful. It's powerlessness, and that's terrifying. You go into survival mode. So we got survival mode on both sides because,
But there's this, I think everyone can identify with that, of like how, if they have that awareness, like, oh crap, I'm trying to control my children's every move. Like, we've come to this modern day where we believe we need to entertain every ounce of our children. So I'll give you an example. Is at the time that you and I are recording this, it is our spring break here, March break. Everyone has said to me over and over and over again, I'm working this week, but they're like, oh, your children are home. That must be very chaotic. That must be this. And I'm like, no, they can be themselves. They can play. Of course, I'm also not raising an infant or a toddler. So that's a little bit different. That's like trying to maintain a wild animal, and you need to be physically present. But if I was, it would be a different strategy now than, of course, when my children were small. But I catch myself with the belief that I need to be with them 24 hours a day because they're quote unquote home. And I see so many humans like cutting off their life force because their children are in their presence. And I'm like, no, it's about being with our children and the quality of our relationships. And I spend a lot of quality time with my kids. It's like those moments that you're all there, rather than like, oh, they're here from 9 to 5. So I need to be like, let's play board games. Let's do this. So like, just what do you observe in your work? So I know you work a lot with parents, and I know your message has evolved over time because you evolve and you keep pulling back the layers. So what do you notice with modern parenting and the struggle? When they have the conscious awareness, they've read the conscious parenting books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's still this need to want to be the driver of our children's experience, their human experience. And we go to this past and future thinking, of, oh, I don't want it to be like my experience. I don't want them to feel like I did. I don't want to screw them up like, I was, or whatever. And then the fear of, oh, what if I do screw them up into the future, whatever a screwed up kid looks like, I don't know. But anyway. And so it's living in fear, really living in the need to control their experience for us to feel okay. Okay. And what I remind parents and myself often about is we can focus on they're not going to have our experience. The fear of, well, they're going to make the same mistakes or they're going to experience this. They're not going to experience our experience. They're a different human being and they're going to experience their experience. And we don't get to decide how that's going to go. And really, we can let go of that. That's a release that you can let go of the need to decide how your child's journey is going to end up. We don't get to do that. We can look at our journey and where we're in it now and where we want to go and create the life that we want to live, and creating what we want on the inside. Because what we create on the inside, and traditionally we do this backwards. We look at the external and try to create, what we think is going to make us happy, all the cultural boxes,
money,
and then that will bring us happiness or some feeling on the inside. And really we need to create what we want on the inside, whether that's peace and calm or, excitement or whatever it is. And so that we can experience it on the outside. And that is what's impactful to our children, not controlling their behavior, not controlling what their experience is going to be, but focusing on creating in our life what it is we want.
And before we dive into the rest of today's interview, we're going to take a quick break to share the magic of a product that has recently made a big impact in my family's daily routine. With summer around the corner and kids spending more time at home, I'm focusing on helping the boys create tiny habits that shift the way they feel without making a big deal about it. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality minerals and vitamins. This special blend of ingredients supports your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, and focus. I've also personally noticed a huge difference in my mental clarity and alertness. And in 2020, AG donated over 1.2 million meals to children. AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. We take it before breakfast, and we're also going to be traveling with it when we're camping this summer. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you, they're actually going to gift you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/EU. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/EU. Athletic Greens is spelled ATHLETIC Greens, GREENS.com/EU to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
I'm just sitting here going, well, one, you and I will be on a beach in a few days, so that's fun. We can have so many conversations. We could literally talk for hours and hours and hours. There's one question I really want to dive into about performing. So you were, in your story, you were talking about how you're performing and that fear of essentially judgment around divorce. And I know a lot of people listening to this have either, well, not a lot of people, not everybody, but there are people listening to this who have already experienced divorce. There's people who are contemplating it. And it, there's so many cultural stories around like broken homes. I hate when people use that term. Or like, I'm going to screw up the kids, or just the fear. We're living in fear, right? And then trying to mask it with, I'm fine. We got this, make it look pretty. I'm just going to shove this shit down and nobody's going to know. And then talking about, watching it come out through your children. So like, I'm just like talking about the performance, how we perform, watching these things come out through our children, being attached, but not attached, being like, hey, you get what I'm saying. It's like, that's their human experience. When do we take ownership? When do we not take ownership? What do we need to take ownership over? And how do you become aware that you've been performing and not actually living? I know, lots of deep questions that I just asked you.
When did I know I was performing? I don't know that I really know the moment when I realized that, but there are moments, like I have a moment that I remember about middle school, sitting in my room, thinking how lonely I felt. And I was a very shy, just very, very shy child. I really had a lot of fear around talking. on don't talk at the wrong time, don't say the wrong thing. My talking was going to get me humiliated. So I just quit talking. And then I also got in trouble for not talking, so I was a very, very, very confusing. So anyway, I really was very disconnected. I wasn't real social, because there was just so much fear of what people were going to think of me. And I remember sitting there thinking, this is not working for me. This is not working. Like, I knew I needed to do something different. And so I used to kind of beat myself up about this, but now I think that was pretty smart, because really it was a survival thing. It was a coping skill. And so I decided, okay, I need to start talking to people. And I was so afraid to talk to people and show myself that I think I just created this persona. And I had decided, well, I'm going to be thin and I'm going to be bubbly, because to me, it looked like that was the acceptance. If I'm thin and I'm bubbly, have, a positive attitude, then everybody will
be likable. Yeah.
Yes. So
now, I actually see you as bubbly. Like, I don't see bubbly. I wouldn't actually describe you as that, but every time I'm with you, when you smile, like, to me, you just light up a room. You feel very open and inviting.
Mm.
Like, how are you like, now this is like truth rather than before it was a persona?
Yeah. I kind of, I think those aspects of me were there and were true for me. I just highlighted those, and then I shoved other aspects of me away and disowned them. And so, when I started really digging deeper into this work, it was like, well, now I'm confused. What is me? What is not me? What is my truth? But I have found that, I think we're all of it, really.
Yeah.
And just owning all of me, every part of me. And that has been a huge shift and a huge freedom, that I don't have to hide parts of me. We're everything. Like, stupid was one that is very triggering to me. Like, I didn't want to look stupid. I didn't want to sound stupid. Yeah. So I didn't share my ideas or my thoughts. And now I just own stupid. And stupid to me now is that, well, I don't know everything, which opens the door to learn more. So yeah, as a child, learning wasn't safe. It got the adults mad at me, it seemed. So I kind of shut that down, but now I'm owning that part of me again. And letting that be an open door to learn more.
What's interesting? One, thank you for saying that. I can even see that in some of my children, when they are like, I'm stupid. Right. So that was, I don't know if stupid was my story. Like, I wasn't triggered by the word stupid. I just did not feel like I had, capability, maybe. Like, the expectation was, I'm not going to go that far. And it's interesting because now when I'm in my world and brain and I'm just like a pistol, and I get the game now. I know how to play. I know how to use my brain. I know how to like move through resistance and fear fast. But when I hear my children say that, I immediately go to like, that's a story. And depending on that belief, how deeply rooted it's going to be, I know they're going to have to undo that work. We all have to undo that work. Why am I telling you this? Oh, because I don't know why. I just had like a brain fart. Oh, the education trauma. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And how, as a teacher, we're just going to touch on this like for a minute, because I know we have to wrap it up, but you were getting noticed in your classroom for how you were just approaching these children of literally, in my opinion, yes, you have to have the education of teaching, like how to actually teach curriculum, But what I believe you were doing was learning how to create psychological safety for other humans, how to hold space and say, all parts of you are welcome here. And I'm going to infuse you with compassion and empathy. And I'm also going to like be a student of what's happening in this classroom, meaning I got work to do when I get triggered. And so, like, beyond teaching a curriculum, what do you actually think you did differently than most adults do today when it comes to education?
Oh, that was such a beautiful way to to describe that. Yeah, I think what's different is that we allowed all the parts of them in. We didn't say, okay, whatever is happening outside of school stays outside of school. No, we let that come in and we learned from it, from each other. They were allowed to talk about my dad's in jail, or they were allowed to talk about my dog died, where I think a lot of others are like, okay, we're not going to talk about that here. And so we just talked about all that stuff. And the thing was, we related to the emotions. I started to relate to mine and help them relate to their emotions and have them. That's the thing, that we can't regulate and have relationship with our emotions if we don't have them. And so that's a whole thing. But what people saw coming into my classroom was compassion.
Yeah.
It was compassion. And that's what was different. And they could feel it. Yeah. It wasn't just things they were hearing and seeing. It was they felt it. And there was no good kid, bad kid. And, I was in an early childhood program. And by 3 years old, they know who the bad kids and the good kids are. And they know that from the way we respond to the children. And we responded to everybody with empathy. And the children learned to respond to each other with empathy. That's one thing I hear a lot. People say, oh, kids are so cruel. Well, where did they learn that? Actually, kids are naturally compassionate. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so it was really, it was beautiful. It was also uncomfortable. And, it was really uncomfortable for me to go against traditional system. Yeah. Was wildly uncomfortable, but that inner knowing kept poking at me saying, keep going, keep going, keep going. So I did.
I love, you said that earlier about the inner knowing. And I think that is, I think we all, even if you don't trust yourself, it's that knowing, it just feels a little bit bigger, a little bit of like, it's a pull. And when you do trust that inner knowing, it guides you back home to yourself. Sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's not. And when you were just talking, Diane, I don't know what it was, but I was getting emotional, and my little Heather was coming up and out around, that's all we want. Like literally, that's all we want. It's not about drilling the multiplication table in your mind or knowing your ABCs. I just wanted to feel safe. I wanted to feel seen. I wanted to feel heard. Clearly, there's always parts of ourselves that still need continuous healing. And it doesn't matter if it's in the classroom, if it is a parent-child relationship, if it is somebody who is a business owner and they're talking to a team member, a client, a prospect, if they're in corporate, stay-at-home mom, like it's this physical body, but yet there's an emotional part of ourselves that is still right back on that carpet, the circle time carpet in as a small child. And it is mind blowing to me how simple it is that as humans, we just want to be seen, heard, and understood. And there is no good or bad. It's a language. Like that child is not being bad. There's something going on the inside. And when we truly see it, hear them, it can transform. But if we're constantly judging and labeling and projecting and controlling, how is that child ever going to feel safe to regulate and get back to their essence?
Right. And I think whether you're a teacher or a parent or any adult working with a child, what it seems, or any person really, we make their behavior say something about us.
Yeah.
And our behavior, we make our behavior about them. Well, if you would listen, I wouldn't have to yell, so. And really what we need to do is turn that around and make their behavior is about them and what's going on within them. Our behavior is about us and what's going on within us. Children aren't making us angry. That anger has been there for a long time. They
trigger the anger inside of us.
Yeah. So,
again, we could chat forever. We'll be mindful of time. So what are you up to? Definitely let everyone know about your podcast, because this is where you continue to have these conversations, the type of work you do. And I always like to encourage people to reach out to you on Instagram and send you a private message. So give them those deets.
Great. So I've got some programs where I am guiding women and mothers to have a deeper understanding of behavior and really redefining our relationships with our children and with ourselves, which correlates to, everybody. And yes, I have a podcast.
I'm just going to say adult children and small children. So
small children, teens, tweens, adults. Yes.
Yeah. Your podcast?
And I have a podcast called Beauty in Behavior. And my Instagram is at beauty.in.behavior. And all of my links are there. So links to my website, links to the podcast. You can learn all about that. And I've added in a new modality recently, which is hypnotherapy. So that's just another way of connecting with our inner world.
Always having our toolbox. Diane, I love you to pieces. Thank you for being you.
Thank you for having me here, Heather. I appreciate it.
There it is. You just listened to the Emotionally Uncomfortable podcast. If you want to take this conversation to the next level, head on over to our private Facebook group community, heatherchauvin.com/Facebook. My last name is spelled CHAUVIN. That's heatherchauvin.com/Facebook. Also, if you are a huge fan of this show, please rate and review it on iTunes. Every review helps another woman like you take back control of how she wants to feel and become emotionally uncomfortable. I truly believe the better we feel, the more alive we become. This is how we are going to change the world. And if you've been watching me for a while, if you've been on the fence and you're curious, how can Heather help me? Head on over to heatherchauvin.com/work with me to check out my mastery and mastery business coaching programs. That's heatherchauvin.com/work with me.